You're listening to Weekend Life with Carly Flynn. 0800 844 747. Magic Talk.
At 6 minutes after 10 after 11 rather, on your Saturday morning, we have seen the movies, haven't we? We've seen the images or the stories of the undercover cop infiltrating dangerous gangs and having to become one of them to keep their cover. So how true is what we see on the telly compared with real life? Well, we're about to find out, because Mark van Leewarden was just 19. He was a brand new cop when he was handpicked to ditch his uniform and learn to lead a double life for a while as an undercover agent. He's written a compelling memoir. It's called CrimeTIme, From Undercover Cop to International Investigator, and he joins us now. Morena, Mark, how are you?
Good morning, Kelly.
Hey, congratulations on writing a brilliant book. It's just incredible to read a story of someone in New Zealand that's gone through what you've gone through.
Thanks for that.
Tell us first of all, how did you come to write it? What made you want to tell your story?
Well, what actually happened was about 6 years ago, Alan Duff of Once for Warriors fame approached me. He'd seen an article about me in the news media. He was in France at the time. And he approached me and said, look, can I write a book about your adventures? And I said, well, yeah. So we got together and chewed the fat about it. And then he went away to write the book. But then he came back to me and said he couldn't do it, that it needed to have my voice, and suggested to me, well, why don't you write it? And I didn't think I could write a book, you know. So, but with his support and encouragement, I set about doing it. Even though the start of it was hard, particularly revisiting and delving into the undercover period, but with his mentorship, I carried on, and that's how it turned out. And without Alan Duff, there wouldn't be a book.
Fantastic. 239 pages later, it's all down in black and white. Must be a really good feeling. Tell us how your undercover life started.
Well, I was walking the beat in Dunedin, and at the end of the shift, I was shoulder tapped by Detective Sergeant, who said, well, do you want to crack at doing undercover work? And really, it's sort of impossibly uninformed consent, because you don't really know what it's going to be like when you do that. And neither do those that are running the program actually know what the scene will be like. But, you know, you're young, looking for adventure. So I said, yeah, why not? And then I went on a seminar, undercover seminar, and I got dropped into Auckland. I'd never been to Auckland before, and coming from Ashburn and Dunedin, I'd even seen a motorway, so it was a bit of a sort of a shock at the beginning.
Absolutely. And what sort of scenario did you first get dropped into? How did you get your street cred, I guess, to be able to begin your work?
I just started off in the rough pubs, got dropped into the rough pubs and was told off you go and make connections. And as it happened, I was quite lucky, because within about 3 weeks I met a major crime figure, and he became my running mate, and he essentially dragged me through the criminal world and introduced me to criminals out there. And I set myself up in the Schooner Tavern, which was like a den of iniquity then, as a fence, so a receiver of stolen property. So I bought electronics and jewellery and guns and from burglars, and then I was also doing drug deals on cocaine and heroin, and yeah, I just started to get rolling and move through the scene.
Did you ever pinch yourself because you'd set out on what you thought was going to be a very respectable life, an honourable life, you know, and then you find yourself infiltrating these gangs and you know, this part of society? At 19 years old, I imagine you're quite impressionable. Was it hard to remember that you were there for the reasons that you were and not get caught up in it?
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. I was 20 when I was deployed, and it was hard because it's not that we ran a full immersion undercover program then, and the only other country that did was the Canadians. So you disappear for a year. You don't just put on a leather jacket and go down the road and buy some cannabis and come home at the end of the day. You actually live out there, and you only have one contact, who's your operator. So it is difficult. And over time, you start to necessarily adopt that criminal persona because that's your protection as well. You don't actually know that it's happening so much yourself, but when you come out for a couple of times during that period and your family sees you, they see you're deteriorating and becoming a criminal.
You had to spend quite a bit of time on the booze by the sound of things, which, a lot of our inhibitions are removed when we're on the booze. Was it easy to maintain your subterfuge while you were drunk?
Yeah, for some of us, that's right. It was, but I think there's some sort of modulator that prevents you from sort of tipping over the edge and making concessions or any revelations that are going to damage your cover. But it was a constant. It was constant alcohol every day because I was in those pubs. And, we'd be drinking beer and then switching to harder drink as the day when it unfolded. So, it's not too good for your physical health, that's for sure, aside from your emotional well-being.
Absolutely. Did you ever feel like you got close to being outed, to being accused of being a narc? Yeah, there was one. I detail one occasion in the book where the word undercover was mentioned. It wasn't a proper challenge because there was no sort of grounds to it, but it had to be met and dealt with in the scene at the time to show that you were going to take that sort of stuff. So it was it's quite a brutal environment. It's a survival of the fittest game, and there's a black market that runs parallel to normal society where the criminal world operates, and that criminal world is always talking about drugs and property and violence and crime. So you're just part of that world. They're not talking about COVID.
What's that?
They're not talking about COVID. That's not top of their priority, no. Like a lot of the country at the moment.
That
well down the list of priorities, I imagine.
It's a complete. That whole underworld operates on completely different rules from your normal society. So the COVID thing is a minor matter that's not going to have any concern at all because all it does is interrupt your criminal activity, drug dealing and the rest of it that you're involved in.
We're talking with author Mark van Leewarden. His book is called CrimeTIme, From Undercover Cop to International Investigator. Scariest moments? I know you witnessed a murder and had to, you played a part in a murder.
Yeah, that was because, I was there at that time and obviously had to produce the evidence to secure the murder conviction. As a result of that, I ended up with a contract on me from the criminal underworld. So that was the scariest time because I had to go back into the scene after that had been outed on the basis that, I wouldn't have gone back in if I was a narc or undercover. But that still didn't allay any of the fears of having to go back in. But there's a constant level of fear the whole time that you're out there, that you're going to be exposed by someone from your former life or a cop that you worked with, or there's just a constant threat because you're operating in that environment. It's a dangerous place to be anyway, just trying to do your criminal business.
Yeah, your day-to-day, yeah. So exposing yourself now, do you have any concerns about writing this book and exposing yourself now?
No, it's just over 3 decades, and well, those people are deceased now. The threats now that are probably more from the international fraud and dealing with organised crime offshore. So, but the undercover one is the threats are quite minimal now.
I was going to ask you about that because, of course, now you are a exceptionally successful international fraud investigator. How do the white-collar criminals compare to the old days of the underworld ones?
That's a good question. They're a different type of beast. The old-school criminals, particularly in the 70s and that, had probably more integrity. They would sort of stick by their word, look after their brothers and their women and their mates, whereas the fraudsters are not like that, and they will continue to operate in a way where they think they're quite entitled, and they don't want to go to jail. They don't think that what they're doing is actually criminal, and yet they deprive people of hundreds of millions of dollars, where these guys might knock somebody over for $5,000, for instance.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. If you'd like to read more, it's a wonderful book, CrimeTIme, From Undercover Cop to International Investigator. The author is Mark van Leewarden. But you're also trying to get a motorcycle tour business up and running. Can you tell us, just to finish off, about this other side of your life? And did that start in the in the gang Harley riding days, or
That's a business that's a sort of more like a lifestyle type game that I kicked off with my son a couple of years ago, and we've got a base in the US, in Virginia. We have bikes there and a US partner, and we have bikes here as well, and we do tours in New Zealand. We did a charity ride with the Salvation Army in February. But of course so we've done some domestic stuff. We can't do the international because it's been mothballed because of the COVID thing. But yeah, I suppose the sheets back to the types of custom bikes and choppers, and that is a part of a longing for the old days.
Yeah, the wholesome side of the old days.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, wonderful to chat to you. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Mark. The book is called CrimeTIme, From Undercover Cop to International Investigator. It is out now. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.
Thank you.
Ellen Duff has described it. If you want a real-life tale of true courage, then read this. Fine words from a fine man.